Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, the turtle who they talked about in their intro, who is running the race without his shell because his trainer stole it so that he moves faster and has a chance to be able to beat the rabbit. The problem with side opposition is that they gaslight these athletes to infinity and beyond, because if you read the motion, the burden of side op is to be able to explain why, if these human rights violations, which are targeted to these athletes, shouldn't constitute grounds for that particular country to not allow these particular athletes to compete and be able to form their own contingent and represent their country. That is to say, the main push coming from side government is that Olympic Games aren't about winning, they aren't about sports, they're about the pursuit and championship of human excellence, of which being able to follow the rules, being able to treat people fairly, and being able to uphold the dignity of people and preserve international and domestic law should come a priori to these particular things and logically prior, and not these strange things we get coming from their side. A few responses to their side before I move on to my extension. The first is, if they claim that these athletes can compete somewhere else, that is a mechanism for side gov, because the only way for them to be able to compete with another country or compete under a independent banner, assuming that's allowed, is if you actually put a check and balance to that state and say, hey state, stop being a dick to your athletes. That is not cool. That's particularly harmful. That's exactly where that benefit and mech comes on our side. Meaning, you can only unlock the thing that they say if you actually are able to call them out for it. I said in the chat, my guy. The second thing is, if they're saying that these athletes are motivated and they want to play, I question the lens of that motivation. Because if they've drunk so much Kool-Aid to the point that they're like, yeah, my rights being violated is fine. It's for this authoritarian regime because my goal in life is to be able to win a gold medal. That's kind of fucked up. If your rights are already being infringed upon, you're getting possibly molested by your trainer, you're a woman and you're forced to take anti-menstruation pills in order for you to have more manly hormones and less estrogen, etc. These are the rights violations targeted to athletes that people experience, which we think has to stop. A lot of countries are overly competitive and overly nationalistic to the point which Andy characterized. They end up doing these bad things out of ignorance, meaning, I didn't know it's bad. To direct malevolence, meaning they have an intent to do it, which is also quite bad. And even if these individuals are doing it for a good reason, a noble cause, that's exactly where we want to call bullshit on the gaslighting, which they do on these individuals who already are physically, emotionally, and mentally suffering. Before that, POI, sure, yeah.
Please do not squirrel this debate. We've already explained to you from LO that this debate does not just extend to authoritarian regimes, but also to oppressed nation states who cannot reasonably be expected to protect their athletes, i.e. Palestine, i.e. Syria, who are undergoing lots of apartheids and war.
Yeah, that's a load of horse, right? Because whether it be apartheid and war, it doesn't justify you to treat people like shit. Side op is the one sidestepping the motion and dismissing their particular burden. Because let's read. This House believes that the IOC should, blah, 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 recognize the NOC of countries that fail to protect the human rights of their athletes. We think that the law and we think that human dignity is binary. It's either you respect it or you don't. And if their case is about how there are instances wherein they do it because they lack capacity, we don't think that's enough ground to be able to allow them to go scot-free. And here's the mechanism. If we bar their particular athletes from competing, it sends a message to these nation states to probably reallocate time and effort to be able to look into these particular things. It pushes them to be able to do things like reallocate government budget away from conflict areas, away from mines, away from the economy, towards this particular thing, which I assume kind of matters to these individuals. And in instances where it doesn't, we don't necessarily sacrifice the shortcoming of the athletes who they claim to be probably conditioned to believe that out of this misconstrued sense of national identity. What is my extension? My extension is that if the IOC does not bar them from competing, they become just as complicit to those individuals who op claims to not know about those particular crimes. Meaning, they know about the bad things happening and their excuse is, wala, apartheid, or, di ko alam, may nangyayari sa gobyerno. I don't know. We don't allow them to wash their hands clean and hugas kamay these bad things happening to particular individuals. The impact is that they become complicit, and we think that as an international organization, they have every prerogative to be able to push back against that in order to not just represent the Olympics, but to be able to do the right thing for humanity. The second is, backlash is likely to happen to that committee or that community at the point in which, after the fact, other nations are going to be like, wait, they got to compete, but they're doing this to their athlete? Oh, even if they were ignorant, it's kind of bad to treat women poorly. It's actually kind of bad not to be able to give them decent pay, even if they're having some sort of local problem in their side of town. We think that it actually becomes worse optics on their side, which is why, yeah, it's not an actor motion, but it shows you the value judgment in terms of why the arc of justice is bending too slowly, and we need to be able to fully bend that in favor of being able to put competing in the Olympics, which is something every country wants to do in order to assert some soft power, at the expense of being able to treat the very hardworking individuals who we think are most important at the forefront of your priority, because they're the ones being able to spend a lot of their blood, sweat, and tears to be able to compete every 4 years for your own country, even if you might not treat them the best. And for all of these reasons, we are very proud to stand on side proposition.